Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast of your favorite team in the Bay Area. On today's episode, I open the mailbag and answer your questions, what you want to know about the Sharks, and a lot of stuff about the Cuda. So, we'll be talking about the Cuda. We'll be talking about the Sharks. We'll be talking about expectations for the Sharks and some other fun, silly stuff in there. So, all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Sharks.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm your host, JD Young, contributor at Fear the Fan and San Jose Hockey Now. I want to thank you guys, of course, for making us your first listen. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Of course, you can subscribe on YouTube. And I want to thank you guys, of course, for, just continuing to follow along in the summer that is right now. We have a couple more weeks of being 3 days. And then I think September 19th, right before the week before the preseason starts, we're going to be back to 5 episodes a week. So we can fully live out your team every day here in a couple weeks. But wanted to open the mailbag. It's been a little while since I've done one. And of course, you guys responded with plenty of great questions. There was actually too many questions. I had to cut some out, which has rarely happened in the Locked On Sharks history. So kudos to you guys. A bunch of amazing questions. Several Timo Meier ones. So I'm just going to save those for next week, where I'm going to be doing a Timo Meier kind of episode, kind of looking ahead to this season and the kind of all the questions and stuff surrounding Timo Meier. So Timo Meier questions, sorry, if you asked one, we're going to be doing a whole Timo Meier episode probably Monday next week. So, but let's get into the mailbag. So kind of the first section is mostly kind of Cuda / younger players. So let's start with those. Leonard Reyes on YouTube's asks, will Tech CU Arena opening, do you think younger players will be kept in AHL no matter how well they're playing, so Sharks can take one more season for the 23 draft? Yes and no. Yes, I think they're going to. The Cuda, the Sharks management has been wanting to make the Cuda fun again. Losing 15 games in a row last year really left a sour taste in their mouth. And with all the changes in the organization, the Cuda also saw a lot of changes in, having this 2020 draft class coming with this brand new building. Like all this stuff is kind of working together to make sure that this season, they want to kind of rebuild this AHL program and rebuild their development. And I wouldn't be surprised if guys are down there a little bit longer than maybe expected. If a guy's playing well for a couple of weeks and, they're not calling him up, that might be why, because they want to, one, there's just a lot more bodies that they have to kind of climb, a lot more people that have NHL contracts that they have to try to jump over. And two, I think they really want to kind of make the Barracuda a winning organization again. So yes, I think they're going to see guys, unless they're like absolutely burning down the AHL and you have to call them up type of situation. But I think they want to kind of slow play some of these guys, so that way when they're ready for the NHL, they're actually ready for the NHL. So yes, I think you're going to see guys marinate a lot longer. This is kind of two people kind of asked the same question. So Jack Olson and Jason B basically asked which guys in juniors or which call-ups do you think we're going to see this year? So from the Cuda. So I think guys on the Cuda right now who I think will probably play. I'm going to go Bordelot, who I think is going to start the season on the Cuda. Bordelot is the easy one. I think Brandon Coe will probably get a couple games into, especially because he's already played an AHL season a couple years ago. I know this will technically be his rookie season, but I think Coe's going to hit the ground running in the AHL, and he'll be playing games for the Sharks. I could see Ozzy as well too, just because of his style of game with that, tenacious forecheck, just speed, let's go type of play where, I think the coaches, if he has a good Cuda season, I think he'll get rewarded as well. And then those are kind of, some of the junior guys. Gushin maybe, but I think Gushin, they want to kind of simmer and stuff. Like Weatherby, and Raska, I'm not going to include those guys because they've already played NHL games. I know Raska's only played a handful. On the defensive side, kind of the same thing. Like Hadaka's played a couple, Knizhov's played a couple. I think Nick Cicek will probably play in the NHL this year as well. So, and then with the goalies, Aaron Dell, if something happens to James Reimer or Capo Kakinen, I think Aaron Dell's the next guy up. So, yeah, those are all the guys I think in the Barracuda that could play in the NHL this year. So, next on the old mailbag, Douglas on Instagram. Another Barracuda type question. What do we know of this Max Véronneau character? I've watched some of his SHL highlights, and he seems decent. Double question mark. Where do you see him factoring in the lineup? So Max Véronneau, he was a Ottawa draft pick way back in the day. Played 30, 40 games total in the NHL. Didn't really stick. Was kind of an AHL guy as well. Where decent career in the AHL. Nothing like major. I think he had 16 NHL games and about 30 to 40 AHL games. My bad. Didn't really do much, but then went to the SHL 2021 season. Played decently, had 12 goals, 18 points in 25 games. But then last year really blew up, had 34 goals, 60 assists in 51 games. Was actually the MVP in the SHL last year. So goal scorer, he's going to add some punch to the Barracuda. I think, kind of one of those flyer guys that we've seen the Sharks do before, with your Donskoy type guys, where you take a flyer on these European guys, see if they can work out for you. So would I be surprised if he plays on the Sharks at some point this year? Probably not. I wouldn't be surprised because I think, he's a grown man who's been playing in SHL and stuff. And I think he's going to add some more competition to the Barracuda. He's going to add some scoring punch. He's going to add some veteran leadership as a guy who's played, all across the world. And it's just kind of another one of those kind of stepping stones for these younger guys where, you have to kind of work your way up. And, like Max Véronneau, he's going to be one of those guys where your Tristan Robbins, your Aussies, and your Brandon Coes are going to have to kind of pass him to kind of work your way up to becoming an NHL caliber player. So, he doesn't, he's on a two-way deal where he can kind of bounce. He's waivers exempt, where he can bounce back and forth between the Sharks. Just some more added depth. And again, I think it's just another guy for the Cuda where they wanted to add some quality players to their young core of guys. So, yeah. Let's get one more in this quick. Finn Lowenberg on Twitter asks, how good will Cuda be this year? And how do you think the Sharks will bury prospects down there? So kind of as before. So I think the Cuda is going to be way more fun to watch, at least. I don't know how good they're going to be. I don't think they're going to be like, trying, I think they're going to be like trying to win the championship or anything, but they're not going to be the worst team in the Pacific, I don't think, anymore. They just have too much quality players now. And I think just the much better goaltending. Sorry, other guys who used to play for the Sharks, but I think Strassman, I think he's going to be in the NHL within the next year or so. And then McAnemy, I think he's well on his way. And I think, like I said, there's just better quality on the Cuda this year. So I think they're going to be, I know the playoffs are much more expanded in the AHL, but I can see them having a pretty decent seed and maybe winning around in the playoffs. But we'll get there. We're going to do a nice Cuda preview here in a couple of weeks. So, yeah, make sure you guys stick around for that. But before we continue, we do need to talk about our friends over at BetOnline. You guys know BetOnline is the number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports information this year. Football season is here, and it is glorious. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, podcasts, including this year's opening week's games. BetOnline's also got you covered for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, which is super fun, especially if a team takes the lead, you think the other team's going to come back, betting the other team to come back, win. It's really fun. Esports and scores, the fastest and easiest way to check in all your favorite sports and events, including MLB. You got, playoff baseball's coming up really soon, MMA, boxing, golf. So head to their websites today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. Next question on here. Kellen_Melon on IG asks, what is a realistic season for the Sharks? He says that they tank halfway through the season. And that's kind of mine too, where I think they're going to give it the old college try to start the season. Mike Greer, he's brought in a lot of NHL caliber players this year. My big thing, I've said this before, is I just don't think they have a lot of upside, right? Like, which guys are you like, that guy's due for a breakout season? Yeah. Maybe Oscar Lindblom returns to pre-cancer form and is a potential 25-goal scorer. Maybe. And even on the Sharks, Eklund, Bordelot, young guys, going to be full rookie seasons. Maybe Labanc returns to form, but none of the guys are you like, oh yeah, this guy's ready to make a step from here to here type of player, right? They're all, you kind of just know who everybody is on the Sharks. Maybe Capo Kakinen is like, okay, I'm a kind of an NHL goalie to like, I'm a starting caliber NHL goalie. Ryan Merkley, okay, I'm an everyday NHL player to a kind of tweener AHL NHL guy. None of those guys are like big, I'm going to make a jump. So that's my thing, is they may have better NHL quality, but I just think the ceiling is super capped on this team. So best case scenario is they're maybe in the wild card race like halfway through the season, but I just think it's going to be another long season and they're going to kind of realize that halfway through the season. And, Mike Greer, I think he wanted to try this season to get this team kind of back, but I think he's going to realize that this team is ready for the teardown that we've been hoping for the last couple seasons. So that kind of leads into the next question from Jake Ewing 11 on Instagram asks, who do you think will be traded at the deadline if they're not playoff bound, and who do you think will acquire if they are playoff bound? If they are playoff bound, they shouldn't trade for anybody because, yeah, they get in the playoffs and anything happen, but if they get in the playoffs, they're going to get in by the skin of their teeth, and then they're probably going to play like Colorado or Edmonton or like that in the first round and just get shellacked. Maybe they win a game. So don't waste your waste your assets trying to acquire anybody. But players who could be, so basically anybody who's on the last year of your deal. So those guys include Timo Meier, who we will talk about more next week. Nick Bonino, you can, I know he has a modified, he has a 5-team no trade list, but you can send his $2 million salary. If you eat half of it, you can send him to a contender for $1 million. He can play, if he's a third line winger on your contending team, he can play center in a pinch. There you go. Noah Gregor, under $1 million. I know he's an RFA next year, but like Noah Gregor go Burr and everything, but Noah Gregor is going to be looking over his shoulder here soon when you have guys like Ozzy Weisblatt and Brandon Coe and Tristan Robbins and these Cuda guys who are going to be playing kind of third line minutes. Yeah. Matt Nieto, everybody loves a nice PK specialist in the playoffs who can chip in a little bit of scoring here and there. Those guys. I mean, Scott Reedy, Jeffrey Viel, John Gadovich. I would keep Reedy. The other two guys, I don't think they would be traded, but if somebody wants them, please you're more than happy. Marcus Nudavara, he's also on a 1-year deal. So if he has a nice season, maybe you could flip him for a pick type of thing. And then James Reimer, again, if a team is looking for some insurance for their goaltending, James Reimer, again, I know he has a 5-team no trade list, but James Reimer go help a team win a cup, and we'll take a pick back. Same thing. So those are the guys that I would be. And then Kevin Labanc, even though he has a year left, maybe he kind of recoups some of his value. You eat his contract for this year and next year. And then you maybe get a nice little pick out of that type of thing. So those are a couple guys right there. I mean, yeah, all those guys, you can be traded. So Locked On Senators on Instagram. Shout out to those guys. Who is the Sharks' biggest fantasy sleeper? I don't play fantasy hockey, unfortunately. It's too much work. I play a lot of fantasy football. I think I'm in like 4 or 5 leagues in fantasy football, and that takes up a lot of my time. So I don't have a lot of time to begin with, but I mean, you would assume it's probably like Hurdle, Couture, Meyer or draftable guys. Eric Carlson, maybe Capo Kakinen if you wanted like a cheap goal, because you're not going to have to pay much for him. And I think you're not going to have to like spend a high draft pick for him. But yeah, maybe Lindblom if he can kind of revert to form. So yeah, it's, again, I don't really play much fantasy hockey just because it's too much work. Sorry guys. All right. And then one more question before we take a break. Jacob Forrester, who runs the Locked On Columbus Blue Jackets on Twitter, asks, who do you think is going to have the biggest improvement over last season? And this is a pretty good question because I'm going to go, this might be kind of a surprise, I'm going to go Ryan Merkley. Or I think Ryan Merkley is going to become an everyday NHL player instead of being this kind of fringe guy. And, that right side is pretty wide open after Erik Karlsson, right? You have Erik Karlsson, you have Matt Benning, who's probably more slotted for a third line role, and Marcus Navarro, who can play left or right, but they don't really have that. That's pretty much it. And, Vlasic's played right a little bit too, but those are your guys. So I think Ryan Merkley, we're going to see him kind of be a more consistent everyday NHL player. I don't think he's going to play all 82 games, but if he's played 60 out of the possible 82 games, and he's stringing together consistent shifts and consistent games, I think that's a huge improvement over what we saw last year, where it was just like flash in the pan. Oh, he looks really great. Oh God, what are you doing, Ryan Merkley? And then we don't see him for, the rest of the game type of thing. So I expect Ryan Merkley, especially this, last year of his ELC, I expect him to kind of show why he should be an everyday NHL player. So I think he's going to be the most improved player when we go look back at the end of this season. So before we continue, I do want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen every day. And now for your second listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022. It's an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team of experts of Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combined into one ultimate NFL preview. So search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. All right, next question. At Michael Molasses on Twitter asks, what would be the biggest surprise for the Sharks in this upcoming season? I think if there were like an actual playoff team would be the biggest surprise to me. Because there's just so many factors that have to go right for them to become a playoff caliber team. You need Erik Karlsson to become Norris caliber type of Erik Karlsson again. Capo Kakinen needs to make a claim as a legitimate, first, goalie, kind of legitimate NHL goalie, not just a legitimate, but like that starter. I can play 55 games a year and be, one of the top 15 goalies in the NHL. William Eklund and Bordelot both need to have Calder caliber seasons. If we'll do kind of more what their seasons will probably look like here soon. But if they're in the 40 to 50 point range, and like from both of them, Logan Couture, he's back in this 60, 70 points. Hurdle is over a point per game. Timo Meyer maybe is 40 with 90 points. If all those things go right, and then all your signings, if they're, more than adequate, if all those things happen, you're probably pushing for a playoff spot there. But that's just so much stuff that has to go right for the Sharks. And that doesn't include like injury luck or, just bad things happening type of stuff. So that would be my, biggest surprise. So kind of biggest realistic surprise, I think, would be Noah Gregor, kind of establishing himself more. So he played, despite not scoring last year, Noah Gregor, Gobert, et cetera, et cetera. But he does all the little things right, and coaches love that stuff. So he also shot at 6% last year, which is not just going to have, like, he's due for some puck luck. So if he shoots closer to like 10, 12%, maybe you have that regression back towards the mean. So instead of scoring 8 goals, then what if he's at like 15 or 20, pushing to 20 type of goals with better puck luck this year. So that's a realistic surprise. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that's something where I'd be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense just because of what happened to him last year. So, and at Andrew America on Twitter has 2 questions. Hasso has a tendency to be hands off as an owner. How much longer does this make it Greer/Quinn's leash? Those guys, they just got hired. They're not going anywhere for a while. I mean, I would expect. Here's my plan of what I think is going to happen. They're going to try to win this year. They're going to realize they can't win this year, and then they're going to go to Hasso and be like, we have to try to tear this thing down, especially in this 2022 or 2023 draft where there is franchise caliber prospects, like franchise altering caliber prospects. We need to tear this thing down and then try to rebuild it. So and then you'd probably get, David Quinn's going to get a shorter leash just because that's the nature of coaches. You probably get 2 or 3 years out of Quinn type of thing. And then Greer's probably gonna get a little bit longer leash, especially if they go to Hasso and they're like, okay, we need to really tear this down. And he actually agrees to it. So, and if they have a sound plan of doing that, I think, Hasso is a very patient guy. Like how long he had Doug Wilson and stuff. And, he let Doug Wilson try to kind of right the ship, but I think he's very patient. And I think he's going to try to give these guys a leash as long as they have a sound plan type of thing. So Andrew also asked, what's your favorite beverage to enjoy while watching a game? Usually I got to record right after. So I'm a Coke guy. I gotta get the caffeine in because I'm going to be up usually pretty late. On a normal game night, the Sharks finish at like 10 or 10:30. I record the episode, get it up and stuff. I'm usually not going like, if I'm lucky, I'm like lying in bed at 12:30 type of thing, starting to try to get to sleep. So, and then I got to get up early the next day and work at my normal job. So, caffeine during the season, it's like 2 or 3 coffees a day, multiple sodas. Anyway, it's bad for me. I know it's sad, but sacrifices, et cetera, et cetera. So, got to keep pushing out the content. All right. Trivial Pursuit on Twitter asks, how do you think Kevin Labanc will respond in this game with new coach system? Is it tailored to a skill, or will he struggle as he did under Bob Bugner? So Kevin Labanc is an interesting Kevin Labanc is an interesting case because he, if you ask the analytic nerds, he's better than his, his scoring totals and stuff. But if you watch the game, it's like, he was healthy scratch before he got hurt last year. And he's definitely has not proved himself worth that almost $5 million contract. And he's got 2 years left on his deal. Hopefully he's healthy. They didn't bring him back last year because apparently he had a setback or whatever it was. They didn't want to bring him back. So at the end of the season, I think he's going to get a clean slate. he can score at times, but he can definitely help out on the power play type of situation. But I don't know what to do with him. I still think he's a middle six type of guy, but I don't know if he's ever going to be that 60-point guy that they want him to be, or even if he's going to be like a 40-point guy, and they've given him a bunch of opportunities, but they haven't. I think he's best suited as like a third line guy, but you shouldn't be paying a third line guy like $5 million a year. So I think they're going to try to ride it out with him, and then we'll kind of figure out what to do next off season, where he's got 1 year on his cap, and you can kind of maybe figure out what to do after that during that season. So, and then the last question from several: can I be your co-host? Yes, you guys are all my new co-hosts. That's why I did the mailbag. Congratulations to all of you guys for becoming the new co-hosts. So congrats. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. We'll be back on Thursday, Friday for our Get to Know the Enemy LA Kings. So a conversation I had a couple of weeks ago with Eddie over at Locked On Kings. Dakota, not a fan of it, apparently. So make sure you guys keep us, make sure you guys are following along on our social media so you know when that comes out. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. You can, of course, subscribe wherever you get podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Odyssey, all those places. Yeah, wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube. So make sure, especially we got new, we got the new season coming up. Make sure you guys want to, it's going to be starting our kind of previews and digging into, we got rookie camp coming up. We got training camp coming up. It's all coming really fast, guys. I can't believe the off season's already almost done. So yeah, make sure you guys subscribe there. You can follow me on Twitter at myfryhole. And yeah, that's it. Bye, friends.